Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Faction Wars, a New World podcast for the week of November 17th, 2021. I am one of your hosts, Stephen Fontana, and with me is my Sherpa of all things New World, Taylar Allen. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great, Stephen. We've got big boy patch notes.
So many.
First big content update for New World.
This is like a whole new video game. that they are patching into this thing. Like it's so many changes, and I'm very excited to get into it. But folks, this is Faction Wars, a New World podcast, and it's all about the latest news, tips, tricks, and stories from the New World. I think level 45 now. I'm still rocking my spear and heals. I haven't deviated from that. You, friend, you're doing your no death run.
I am.
And that's interesting.
Yeah, so I have my main character that I, am primarily focused on getting all my crafting up and, min-maxing the gear scores and all that. But I thought it would be fun to do a little series over on my Twitch stream for a no-death run. So I started a brand new character on a brand new server. I don't have any friends on this server. And I am trying to go from level 1 to level 60 and complete the story without dying. We're up to level like 24 now, 23, 24. Haven't died yet. And if Obviously. I die, I just delete the character. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
you're using bow and arrow primarily is what I saw.
Yeah, bow and hatchet is what I'm doing so far.
I feel like ranged is the way to go. Because you could do a ton of damage before they even get to you. Yeah,
that's where I was at. I wanted something that I could do ranged, something that I could also feel good about like adding some constitution to, so I didn't have to split my points between two different damage scaling stats.
Right.
So I'm going full dex and constitution.
Smart.
And it's been good so far.
Smart. All right, well, I mean, we're just gonna dive in, man. We have a lot to cover here, so I am going to hand this beautiful baby bird over to you. Taylar, please take us into the void.
Alrighty. So the very first major content update for New World is here, Into the Void. A lot of these features we highlighted in depth last week, so we're not going to go through every single line of these patch notes, but we want to make sure that we go over the big things that are going to be important to people playing the game. So item number 1, Void Gauntlet is now in the game. Very excited to get my hands on that, get the mastery up, and get that 580 gear score legendary quest done. We don't need to go too into depth on that one because we talked about it last week.
Check out last week.
The new enemy faction was added, the Varangian Knights, as well as a number of new enemy types for existing enemy factions. A couple of big things that they highlight as far as changes to the world. They added visual variety and improvements to the starter zones, which I think is awesome because all of those starter zones kind of feel the same.
Yeah.
They have also changed some of the visuals around like the corrupted and withered areas to make them seem more dramatic, which I think will be cool. One of the big things I'm really excited about is a 10% movement buff when traveling along roads. I think this is much needed. There's a lot of running around in this game, getting from point A to point B, so that movement buff is going to be awesome. And then something that we covered in episode 1 was actually implemented in the game. If you're flagged for PvP, you get a 10% luck bonus and a 30% gathering luck bonus at all levels, which is awesome. Very, very excited.
Very good. Yeah, I may make the switch to PvP and see what happens.
I've noticed not a lot of people flagging. I mean, this may cause more people to flag for PvP, but not a ton of people are doing it. So maybe you could just do it, get that nice juicy luck bonus. Moving on down, there's a number of AI fixes, bug fixes with enemy spawn types and things like that, as well as world collision navigation, stuff like that.
Polishing some of that jank out.
Yeah. Just hitting it with a hammer till it looks pretty.
That's right. I'm pretty sure that's how blacksmithing works.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Moving into the questing section. New PvP faction missions have been added, control point, intercept, and war camp loot. Adding a little bit of variety there. I think that's going to be awesome for endgame PvP, especially in the open world. Some really nice changes that they've highlighted about the main storyline to improve player experience and offer more dynamic events. So we talked about this a little bit recently as well, but they highlighted in detail which quests in particular have changed and some of the things that they're doing to make these better, including wave-based encounters, destructible objects, proximity tracking nodes, things like that. So very excited to see what these changes actually look like in effect.
And if you're in the middle of those missions, some of these, especially the old Stone Remembers and New Initiate Old Order, there's more extensive restructuring, so you have to restart those missions. So if you're in the middle of those, sorry about it. And if you completed them, you don't have to worry about it. But that I'm interested to see what those changes are. I actually completed those, obviously, but be interested to see what, because it's, I mean, to say it's extensive means it's got to be like, you know,
completely reworked.
Yeah,
the missions,
essentially. Yeah.
They also highlight later on certain story missions where you fight some of those like blocked off bosses that you can't go in after you've completed it. They've made those a little bit more accessible, so they're easier for solo players, which I was very excited to hear about, because that's one point in my no death run that I'm sweating a little bit. Like, you know, because I'm only playing that character once or twice a week, it's obviously very far behind. There's no one on my server to run it with me. That's it's a little scary. So the fact that they brought those balance changes in line to make it a little bit easier for solo players is very nice.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Like I mean, I don't really know, like in my context, because I play mostly solo. Like when I'm with people, we're usually not together because everybody's got so many different missions all over. They need mission sharing. They really do. Like that's one thing that I really wish they would just put in there, where like, hey, I'm the leader. I'm doing these 4 quests. Cool. Does anybody want to ping their own quests? Okay, cool. I'll accept and put them on the board, and we'll go and do them together. Like, they need that desperately. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're actually about to get to this point where they made this change. So I'm interested to see what you think. Because previously there was a boss, spoilers for the story of New World. The fisherman that you meet in the very beginning of the story becomes corrupted, and you end up fighting him in a cave. And he's tough. If you're fighting him at or even slightly above the recommended level and you're by yourself, you're going to get smashed every time. Oof. So they brought his difficulty down pretty significantly, it sounds like, made it so that he isn't self-healing nearly as much, and makes it a little bit easier for solo players.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's move into combat. Swing. This is a big one. We're going to go a little bit more in depth here. First, with consumables, they fixed a bug. I actually didn't know this was a bug. I thought this was how they intended the food to work, but you are only allowed 1 food buff to stack from different tiers and types of food. Meaning you can't pop a like a hearty meal and an energizing hearty meal at the same time to get the health and mana regeneration. You get one or the other. So they've fixed that. Makes you have to be a little bit more decisive with the types of food that you're consuming. And then they also fixed a bug that was preventing weapon coatings from being consumed when used. looking at general gear perks, there are a number of these that are going to make a big difference in how you play the game.
Oh
So
yeah.
first, leeching, health leeching on hit, things like that. Previously were not great because the range of values that you could get on any piece of gear was between 0.5% and 1.5%.
Yeah.
They have just blown that range up, and that now goes from 1% to 5%, which means if you get a full leeching armor set, you can be doing 25% health leech on hit if you get a full 5%, which makes leeching way more viable within the game, which I'm very, very excited about. They've also increased the efficiency of Freedom, Vigor, and Invigorate debuff reduction perks. Previously, those were reducing between 3 and 5%. That is now between 3 and 8%. They've decreased cooldowns on a number of perks, like Keen Speed, bringing it more in line with some other perks to make them a little bit more easy to use. They've increased the poisoning, bloodletting, burning, crippling, enfeebling, and infected duration on ring perks. So that goes from 3 to 7 to 5 to 15, which means if you get rings that increase your burning, increase your bleed, increase your poison, pretty much any of those like big damage over time numbers, they're going to damage over time for longer or damage over time harder. Which means those dot abilities are going to be awesome.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, what did they test for the, like the original rates? Because the original rates, like when you see them in black and white like this, seem really low, like super low.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's why if you got leeching, for example, on any piece of armor, you just immediately scrapped it because it was a wasted perk slot. Like it just wasn't giving you enough to make it worth it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
But with these changes, I think it's going to be really good. They also fixed a bunch of bugs on the chain elemental perks. So some weapons can roll with perks that will link a bunch of enemies together with elemental damage. And those weren't working correctly, so they fixed that. Equip load, this is a big one. So healers almost entirely were running around in heavy armor because your armor class did not affect the amount of healing that you were putting out like it did with damage.
Right.
They now changed that so that light equip load increases your healing bonus to 30%. Previously, it was stated that it was 20. It was actually 0. It wasn't increasing it at all. And this is going to be very important when we get to the life staff because the life staff took a major nerf. So healers are definitely going to need to be in light armor here. And then on medium from 10% to 15%. So they basically added 50% on both of those.
Yeah, I mean that's smart, but also I feel like it kind of also takes away options for character role play. Like if I wanted to be like a paladin, that kind of takes that away for me a little bit, or at least makes me less of a healer, more of a secondary healer or something like that, which this game really doesn't it doesn't really lend itself well to specialized classes like that. Like it's heals, it's damage, it's tank. Like that's really the way the game kind of does the rock paper scissors situation. And I don't know, like this might cause some issues, I think, with people who want to solo now, that used to wear the heavy armor to protect themselves, now are going to have to sacrifice being able to keep themselves alive with that. I don't know, it's just, they may have to tweak that a little bit more, but we'll see.
Yeah. The issue we were running into is paladin builds were stupid strong in the end game. PvP, they were basically unkillable because they had 15 to 20k health pools and also could self-heal.
Yeah.
Like they just wouldn't die. And so I think a lot of these changes, and there are a couple of other ones that we'll get into as well, are all just lining up to make it so that people can't live forever and they have to rely on their, weapon skill and ability to outplay people instead of just stand in a healing pool with heavy armor and not die.
Right.
Hey, moving down to attribute threshold bonuses. So there are a couple of different things here that they changed. First, on the 250 Constitution bonus, there was a damage reduction that you got there at 80%, which is very, very strong. This is kind of where those paladin builds would come in. They would get to that 250 con, get 80% damage reduction, and then also have self heals. That is dropped down to 60%, which I think is a good change. And then they also fixed the 250 strength bonus bug where you wouldn't be able to like dodge cancel out of attacks and things like that. So fix that. They also made some changes to the dodge, which made it so that all of the weapons were more in line on their invulnerability windows and things like that. So just getting all weapons kind of on the same page as far as dodges go.
That's a little weird that like it felt like it made the weapons a little different, and now it seems like they're just gonna kind of bring them all a little bit closer together. I don't know if I like that, but we'll see how it plays.
Sure. Let's talk about weapon changes, Steve, because pretty much every single weapon in the game got touched in some way. Some much heavier than others.
Yeah.
First, talking about the Warhammer, we see pretty significant buffs on a lot of abilities that weren't being used. You'll notice kind of the theme of these patch notes around the weapons in general is they wanted to make abilities that are chosen less often more appealing. So on the Warhammer, things like Armor Breaker, Mighty Gavel, and Wrecking Ball all saw significant damage increases, saw increased bonus damage from some of their passives, increased effectiveness on their crowd control, decreased cooldowns, things like that. We saw a little bit of a nerf on Shockwave, which is the ability that everyone uses with the hammer. That's the one where you slam the ground really hard and it hits 3 or 4 times consecutively. It just reduced the maximum rend effectiveness on
you always see
item
people
perk.
using that.
So yeah, that one is not as big of a deal. It's not a huge nerf to it, but slightly less effective there. Moving down to the life staff. My baby boy has been nerfed into the ground, Stephen.
Yeah.
So, top line before anything, reduced base healing by 20% across the board to account for increase in healing from equip load. Which means if you're wearing light armor instead of heavy armor, you're actually only seeing a 10% healing increase from what you were doing prior.
Yeah, that's something.
It's a little frustrating. They did fix a number of targeting issues. If you use like ground targeted abilities like Sacred Ground with the life staff, you know how frustrating it could be when an ally runs out of range.
Just
and so
a little out of range.
Yourself.
Yeah.
So you self cast it and you're like, God damn it, now it's on a 20-second cooldown, you know?
Move the fight over here.
Yeah, and then your whole team dies. So they fixed a number of those ground targeting UI issues, and instead of self casting, it will just cancel the ability, which is nice. Looking at Sacred Ground, a couple of changes here. One, the Fortify perk on Sacred Ground has been changed from a range of 3 to 15% to 3 to 10%. So just taking that top line down a little bit. For the passive Holy Ground, the stamina and mana regeneration has changed from 50% or from 100% to 50%.
That's such a nerf. Good Lord.
Yeah. So that means like your tank and stuff standing in Sacred Ground isn't going to just be able to hold their block up 100% of the time now.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays. but that's a pretty significant nerf, and I honestly think that's going to hurt high level PvE content more than anything.
Yep. 100%.
They also fixed the bug that allowed you to stack healing multiple times if you had multiple sacred grounds from different healers that had a different level of upgrades within the tree.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. So, Orb of Protection. They fixed a couple of bugs here. They also changed the functionality on Mending Protection, which is the item perk for Orb of Protection.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of triggering if the target doesn't have any active buffs, it now triggers if the target healed by Orb of Protection is under 50% health.
That's
so that
cool.
actually aligns with a couple of other abilities in the healing tree that also trigger on if your ally is under 50% health, which is nice. So that's actually a nice change for Orb of Protection. Light's Embrace. The connection upgrade on Light's Embrace was upped from 1% to 2%.
I have no idea what that means.
Light's Embrace is an ability that no one uses. So it's just a slight uptick. You basically heal your entire party if they're all within a group.
Yeah, I used that.
People are.
Yeah, I used that very briefly and realized it was very weak.
Yeah. So if you have more people in the connection, it increased the bonus healing from 1%.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
So passives. This is the biggest nerf of all of these to the life staff. Blessed, which is a must-have item perk on your life staff and on your jewelry, has been splashed into the ground. So the range that you'd be able to roll on any gear that had Blessed was between a 10% and a 30% increase on all outgoing healing. They've dropped that range from 5% to 20%, which means every single item that I have on that has the Blessed perk is taking a significant hit down.
Yeah, that sucks.
Because all of mine were like 25 to 27%. So that's a massive nerf. We have seen the end of the healing meta in New World, I think. And there are a couple of other things that we'll get to later on, actually with the Hatchet, that makes healing even more difficult now. So, moving down to
sounds
the
like
Hatchet.
I'm going to be abandoning healing.
Yeah.
Sounds like I'm going to be a spear, I don't know, bow main or something. I don't know.
That'd be fun. Moving down to Hatchet, they fix a bunch of issues around the throw tree. And they mention in the patch notes that they really want the throw tree to feel powerful and be a viable option. So, first, a couple of fixes on the Berserk side. They fixed an issue where activating Berserk would consume a couple of buffs that you had on, like Relentless Fury,
yeah, they would just
accumulated
disappear,
power,
right?
things like that. Yeah, they just disappear. They fixed an issue on Feral Rush where you could just spam it continuously within settlements. That's just kind of a funny thing. I was actually doing that the other day. I ran all the way across Windsward, just doing the fun little like kickflip axe slam thing. So that was fun. They also fixed some issues on Raging Torrent where your attacks would just miss even if you were hitting the enemy.
Yeah,
now,
it seems like there's a couple of weapons that have that issue.
Mm-hmm. Moving down to the buffs on the throw tree. One, Infected Throw. Infected Throw procs disease and weakness on enemies, which decreases healing output. So Infected Throw is going to be a really good way to counter healers. They increase the disease and weakness duration from 5 seconds to 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So they've doubled that. They've increased the passive mortal power bonus duration on low health targets from 8 seconds to 15 seconds, which means if you hit a healer under 30% health, they are going to have 15 seconds of disease and weakness instead of 10. And then aerial termination, they increase the duration of the AoE cloud from 3 to 6. So they basically make it so that you can throw an AoE cloud of this disease
Yeah.
instead of having to hit the enemy directly. And they've increased the duration on that as well. On Rending Throw, they decrease the cooldown by about half. And then on Defy Death, they fix the issue where the ultimate cooldown timer was removed when you died. So.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving over to... Oh, go ahead.
No, just first, it seems like that tree, that weapon has gotten probably the fairest shake so far. Out of the three we've gone over. So, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like that is the, it fixed what was wrong with it, and then it made it so it was a more desirable, one of its trees was more desirable, which I think is the purpose of these types of things.
Yeah, I agree. And basically everyone was just going full Berserk tree. They wouldn't even take a single passive on the throw tree because it didn't make sense.
Right.
So making that tree more desirable, I think, is going to add a little bit more diversity into the end game, which is nice. Okay, moving down to Great Axe. Not a ton of major changes here. They fixed an issue with Gravity Well that made it so that players were slowed much longer than they were supposed to be. So little bit of a nerf to Gravity Well, not anything significant. They added Grit to Whirlwind, so you can't be knocked out of Whirlwind anymore. And also fixed the issue where you could stack an infinite number of Fortify perks if you had the right item perk on your Great Axe. And then they fixed a couple of passives as well. Like Heavy Pull had incorrect hitboxes and stuff if you had that equipped on your heavy attacks. And then the Gravity passive no longer increases the duration of all pulls. So pretty minor changes to the Great Axe. The Great Axe was really strong to begin with, so they didn't really have to do much here. But just minor tweaks, bug changes there. Okay, moving down to the bow. The bow's abilities got a couple of buffs. So first they fixed the issue where sometimes if you consecutively shot primary attacks, it would like double proc and you'd shoot 2 arrows super fast, like you were Hawkeye.
Yeah, I think that's a problem also in fishing. If you are, because this totally triggered this memory, if you like continuously tap the mouse, it will sometimes just hold it and then you'll break your line. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I think that might be the same thing that's happening on this primary attack. It's like basically going into like a... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say they actually address the fishing bug later in the patch notes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they fixed that. So, but yeah, I think it's the same issue. Just like recognizing those mouse clicks as a hold.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things. One, they made it more clear that abilities like Rain of Arrows, Poison Shot, Splinter Shot cannot headshot. So you're not going to get crit damage from those. I think people were using Poison Shot and getting crit, and that was devastating. So little change there. Poison Shot, they did reduce the cooldown of that from 35 seconds to 30. And
That's
then
pretty good.
They also fixed the issue where Poison Shot, if you start the ability but you don't shoot the arrow, that it would go into cooldown. I've ran into that a couple of times, so nice to see that change. They've reduced the cooldown on Rapid Shot pretty significantly from 20 seconds to 14 seconds, which I'm excited about. Rapid Shot's a really cool ability, so getting that shorter cooldown is nice.
Yeah.
And then a couple of bug fixes, like Rain of Arrows was hitting enemies through doors and things like that.
So a lot of attacks do that.
Yeah.
You can cheese a lot.
Overall, though, a couple of small buffs to the bow. loving the changes. I think it's nice to see them make these abilities a little bit more viable.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Moving down to the sword. The only changes for the most part that they made on the sword was to Leaping Strike. The exception is they did increase the weaken duration on Shield Rush if you have the improved Rush perk. So that's from 4 seconds to 10 seconds. So a slight buff there. But Leaping Strike, they buffed pretty significantly. They reduced the cooldown on it from 25 to 18, increased the damage from 135 to 150% weapon damage. They sped up the recovery after doing Leaping Strike, so you can get right back into your other attacks and abilities. And then they also updated the tooltip to show percentage values on the Cowardly Punishment perk there. So, only change there really is making Leaping Strike better.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, the Sword and Shield I see is probably the least troublesome of all the weapons. Like, it just works.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see the nerf that Fire Staff gets, because that has been... I've seen a lot of people late game abuse the shit out of this weapon, so let's see if it got nerfed.
Yeah. Big changes coming to Fire Staff. Pillar of Fire got a ton of changes. So for Fire Staff users, Pillar of Fire, if you placed it just right, you'd actually be able to double hit on enemies. They've actually changed that now, completely removed that. That was a bug, not acting as intended. So that's no longer there, but they did increase the damage scaling on that pretty significantly from 134% to 170%. So you lose out on those double damage procs, but base damage is going to be a little bit more consistent on Pillar of Fire. They also fixed a couple of bugs where certain abilities like Runes of Helios weren't triggering when casting. So slight buff on Pillar of Fire, even though some may view it as a nerf if they were taking advantage of that bug. Fireball. Fireball, they added some clarity that Fireball is not able to crit. They say that previously it would show the crit damage color, but not actually deal increased damage.
Weird.
I did a little bit of testing on this. I don't know that that's entirely true.
Okay.
Obviously, there are a bunch of different perks and factors that go into how much damage you deal with a hit.
Right.
But I felt like I was getting some crits on Fireball that were increased damage. So they changed that. And then Flamethrower is the last ability that got a buff. The damage scaling on Flamethrower increased from 34% to 50%. So just at a first glance, none of the abilities really got hit all that hard. A lot of them actually got buffed or just had some bug fixes. But the passives is where we really see the big changes because the Fire Staff passives were so strong. So things like Clear Casting, they reduced the damage bonus from 10% to 5%. Clear Mind, they reduced the Empower effectiveness from 10% to 5%. Runes of Helios, they reduced the damage bonus from 30% to 25%.
Yeah, they reduced everything almost by
everything. Yeah, like
by 25 or 50% basically.
They've also reduced crit damage chance. They've reduced crit damage bonus. They've reduced the damage bonus on burns. Like pretty much every passive that you are taking is taking a significant nerf to it.
The numbers seem small, but they're not. Like
yeah,
when these things are implemented, it's not.
Yeah, these all proc on your basic attacks.
Right.
Like this isn't an ability that goes on a 20-second cooldown after you cast it. Like this is something that you can spam over and over and over, and you can stack multiple things on top of each other. And so you were critting 50% of the time and getting burn and getting, 25% damage increase on all of those.
Right.
Like it's pretty significant, these changes. So the passives on the Fire Staff took a pretty big hit. All right, moving down to the Spear. This is your boy, Steve.
This is my weapon.
I made a TikTok yesterday stating that the Spear Rapier meta is here.
Oh boy.
And I genuinely believe that the Spear, the changes are so good. So first, on the sweep, they increase the damage on the coup de grace ability, which is the one where you stab the spear into the tripped enemy on the ground. They've increased the damage scaling from 125% to 150% so that it hits harder. That attack is also now flagged as a heavy attack. So all of your passives in that tree that trigger on heavy trigger on that ability.
That's awesome.
They also said that in a previous dev blog that they increased or improved the tracking on coup de grace as well, so that you are hitting it more consistently on those downed enemies, because sometimes hitting that downward stab was a little inconsistent.
Yeah, like if you're kind of rotating the camera at the same time, you might just go in the direction that the camera's facing as opposed to where the enemy actually is. It can be a little frustrating, especially when, you know, if you were getting I didn't even realize that the damage was scaled that much on that weapon, but like, or on that ability. But yeah, it sucks when you miss that, because like if I solo, you know, so I rely on sweep, stab, and then when they get up, I do the kick so that they're stunned, and then I finish them off with my skewer, and usually they don't even get to attack me. So, but if I miss that coup de grace, like, oops. Yeah. Now I need to actually play the game.
Now, speaking of skewer, they've increased the bleed damage from 10% weapon damage to 20% weapon damage. Let's go. So bleeds are going to be huge. We'll see this with the Rapier too. Bleed damage is going to be a real problem and damage over time. Perforate also saw a damage increase. That's the one where you like stab like 3 times.
Yeah.
So that got a damage scaling increase from 70 to 80%. They also fixed the bug where you weren't getting the reduced cooldown from Perforate if you had the continuous motion passive. They increased the damage scaling on the Cyclone ability from 110% to 130%. And then they fix an issue on Vault Kick where, and you'll see this on a number of different abilities, where the cooldown would begin 1 frame before the hitbox would appear.
Yeah.
Which means you could get knocked out of it and it wouldn't hit, but it would go on cooldown. And that happened all the time. So that should feel a little bit more consistent now. You won't get knocked out of that ability as much. But overall, pretty significant damage increases across the board to an already pretty solid weapon. Hey.
Oh, it's the home stretch, man. We got 3 more. 3 more. Do you want me to go over some of these?
The Ice Gauntlet changes are significant.
There's so many. There's so many changes.
Yeah.
Like,
let's have you jump into the Ice Gauntlet.
All right. I'm just going to take, okay. Heavy attack, increase the startup and recovery time. So that it's more consistent with other magic weapons heavy attacks. Movement while attacking was faster than other magic weapons. Now it's not. They fixed that. These are all like bugs. They fixed an issue where basic attacks on the Ice Gauntlet could sometimes shoot through an enemy without dealing damage. Yeah, if they were too close. Yeah, I've seen that happen. That also happens with the life staff too. I don't know. I guess maybe they fixed that earlier. I don't know. The time between damage ticks for Ice Storm has increased.
Yeah, so Ice Storm, that's the like big frozen dome.
Yeah.
Significant nerfs here. Basically a 25% damage nerf because you're getting 3 ticks per second instead of 4. They fix a couple of issues with it. If you know, like if you had the Unending Thaw item perk, it actually wouldn't do any damage at all. Wouldn't do damage to enemies immune to slow and stuff.
That's weird.
So they fix a couple of those issues, but the big thing here is across the board 25% damage reduction.
Yeah, I mean, Wind Chill got a nice little boost here, increased damage scaling per tick from 16 to 20%. The Ice Shower got a increased cooldown by 10 seconds, that's a lot of seconds to wait. Entombed, which I see a lot of people use. You can no longer be healed when you're entombed. That is crazy. Reduce the health of the tomb by 50% of the player's max health, so it's basically a little squishier. Reduce the damage of the breakout burst from 168%, which is ludicrous, to 70, which I feel like is way on, like, that's a 100% drop. Like, that's a lot. That is a huge huge drop. They fixed an issue where invulnerability on Entomb could be removed while the tomb was still active, which you saw people like sliding around and stuff. I think that's what that addresses. Fix an issue that allowed players to move. Oh, that's it. Removed while entombed after dying. Yeah, I've seen that a few times. Ice Pylon, the health is increased by 20%. Max lifetime is now 45 seconds. So now they added a max lifetime. I guess it was infinite unless you killed it.
Yeah, so this was actually leading to an issue where players would drop an ice pylon in like a dungeon or something and then would move on. But if they had a certain level of upgrade on the ice pylon, it would just never die.
Yeah.
And so they could just never use their ice pylon again. So adding that max lifetime definitely helps avoid that issue.
Yeah, that's yeah. Wow, it seems like we were playing the beta. Like, a lot of this shit is just like, oh, that's happening. Okay, yeah, let's fix that. This should be called the 1.0. Like,
yeah.
Ice Pylon could consume mana but wouldn't activate on slopes, terrain, or off a ledge. I do remember that when I was messing around with it. It's weird. Basically, I felt like all of the abilities were tied to whether or not you just push the button, not whether or not the thing happened. And it seems like across the board they are fixing that. Ultimate Chill is the passive, reduced the bonus from 35 to 25, so a 10% drop on that. Fix an issue with Ultimate Chill's ability would not apply to enemies in some cases. I don't know about that one. I don't know if it's kind of a widespread thing. Critical Frost reduced the critical change bonus from 20% to 15. Energized Critical reduced critical damage bonus from 15 to 10, so another drop on each of those. Heavy Freeze added 5 seconds to the cooldown to the freeze effect, and they had a couple of bug fixes as well. So that's
down here in the passive section. This is basically the same thing they did to the Fire Staff.
Right, exactly.
Even though they nerfed some of these abilities, they also went in and took all of the very powerful passives and just slammed them into the ground.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people saying, this game unplayable now. I no play again. Go to WoW. We'll see. Please don't do that. Yeah. Just keep playing the game so that you can hang out with us. The Rapier has a couple
changes to the Rapier.
Yeah.
Love these changes.
Love them. So Tondo, Flourish, and Fleshe? Fleshe.
Fletch.
I think it might be Fleshe. Like Fletch?
I think it's Fletch.
Okay. Had their cooldown begin 1 frame before the hitbox would appear. Ding, ding, ding. Same issue. Flurry improved the homing of Flurry. Yeah, there you go. It's basically the same shit as like the stab and the skewer thingy, and like the stab thing. What do we got here? Tondo reduced cooldown from 11 seconds to 6. That's going to make that way more useful.
So you're going to be able to stack bleeds so much faster, especially when you combine that with some of the perks where you reduce cooldowns on hit for all attacks.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be able to get through that Tondo refresh really, really quickly.
Yeah, and I actually did notice this, so I never used it, but apparently that upgrade only functioned on blocking targets, so that is no longer the case. Riposte, cooldown's reduced by 8 seconds, so now it's only 12 seconds, which is ridiculous. The base stun duration is increased from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds. That's actually really helpful. Stun, I feel like, is the weakest effect that the game has. It just does not last very long at all. So that's good to see. Lasting Consequence stun duration increased from 2 seconds to 2.5. And then we got some passives here. Momentum increased the bonus damage from 25 to 30% when you use that passive. And Swiftness fixed an issue where this passive was granting haste from bleed damage ticks instead of the actual weapon hits. That sucks, because that was a very exploitable situation.
Yeah. So overall, the changes on the abilities are really nice. Riposte is going to be a problem. That's the only like parry ability in the game. So you have to be really good knowing all of the like different weapon animations and stuff, but you can basically say no, you, and block whoever you're fighting.
Yeah.
And they stay in place for even longer now.
Yep. PvP is going to be a pain in the ass against the Rapier.
Yep.
The Musket is the final one here. Balance updates. That's what this was. That's the goal here. Increase the base damage by 2.5%. Yes, I agree with that. It seems to be good. The least picked of the ranged options. Fixed an issue where the Musket could not reload after dodge rolling, then triggering auto run. That is a very specific fix. Let's see. Let's just go into the traps. Traps can no longer be triggered by players in Death's Door. So I guess that was a problem of people who are laying on the ground, landing. You could like put a trap down by them, and then because they're moving,
and they'd get stuck in it. Yeah.
Sticky Bomb increased the damage a shit ton from 175% to 235%. So that's massive. Stopping power.
That's a great change.
That's
too.
It's a bomb. Like
no one was taking that, and so adding that significant damage increase, I think, is awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be a great. I might actually play with the Musket. I feel like the Musket, and when that's going to come to the next ones, the cooldowns were way too much for the Musket. I mean, obviously, it's a Musket, you know? So, yeah, it takes time to load, but, like, it's a video game. We're trying to play a video game. Like, stop it. The bow and arrow should not be, like, twice as fast, but I digress. Stopping power, the cooldown's reduced from 18 to 15 seconds. Power shot is reduced from 15 to 12. Shooter's stance is reduced by 2 seconds from 20 to 18. Players can now exit shooter stance by pressing sprint, the ability key, dodge, escape, or releasing the right mouse button. And then critical reload, fix an issue that caused this passive to function inconsistently. Dear God, those are the changes to the weapons. We did it.
All right, everyone take a breath. In and out. Overall, I feel like this is a good change. Magic was very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And people weren't able to die. So, making some nerfs to Constitution, to Life Staff, and to those big damage-dealing magic abilities is good. Bringing Spear and Rapier to the forefront and keeping them competitive with some of the other melee weapons. Love it all. Love it all.
Guys, there is a whole ton of AI and bug fixes and tuning. Go read about that on newworld.com. You could go to their patch notes there. But I think we should skip along to these changes, specifically in the economy.
Yep.
Because that's the one that's been really suffering as of late.
Yep. So economy, progression, and loot. Couple of things right off the top. One, faction change cooldowns have been reduced to 60 days. Those were previously 120 days. So that means you can change factions more often. Your server's just absolutely flooded with yellow people like ours is. Everyone should switch to green so that we can beat them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you mean.
But yeah, good change there. Repair kit weights have been massively reduced. Those were previously 2 pounds each, and so it just wasn't worth keeping them on you. They dropped that down to 0.1. So significant weight reduction. It'll allow you to carry repair kits, and it's actually worthwhile to do so now. They also added a new item, the chunk of Consecrated Iron, to the top rank of the faction shop for all factions. This allows you to craft the Resilient perk for armor items.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, economy-specific changes. One, all trading posts have now been linked. An important note here. Both the listing tax and the purchase tax will be paid on the territory where the buy or sell order was listed. Meaning, if you're buying something in Everfall, something was listed in Windsward, you are paying the tax rate of Windsward.
Mm-hmm.
And then thing number 2 is you can no longer post trading posts for 28 days. Maximum is now 14.
Yeah, I don't even know why there's... I don't know. I feel like a month was way too long.
Yeah, I agree. They decreased the durability loss from PvP deaths by 10%, which is nice. It'll make it more enticing to play PvP, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to fix your shit. They also significantly decrease the amount of honey and milk that you get out of the apiaries within town and milk from cows. So 50% reduction on honey, 65% reduction on milk. They said there was just way too much milk and honey out in the world. This last sentence cracks me up. The bees and cows are happy about this change.
They should be.
Yeah. And then the last big economy change, housing taxes are now due every 7 days instead of every 5 days.
Makes
There's no
sense.
change to the cost, so players gain 2 extra days of housing time for free.
Yay.
Yeah, great changes there.
Yeah, because because a week is 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
You morons. Like, what were we thinking there? Whatever.
Yeah. Progression, for those of you that are really trying to level your crafting trade skills, you are going to see even more diminishing returns if you are crafting lower level items.
Yeah.
For example, once you, like if you're crafting iron arrows, once you unlock the ability to craft steel arrows, the amount of XP you get on the iron stuff drops off significantly.
As it should.
They say the same amount of effort to progress the crafting skill should be about the same as long as you're crafting the highest tier items you're capable of crafting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's easier, as long as it also scales with the ability to get those materials to make that, like, I agree with that, but, like, it takes significantly longer to craft those higher tier items.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's going to be a worthy trade-off. Like, me going out and being like, I'm going to work on my, you know, wood skills. Like, going out, just chopping a shit ton of trees and then going in there and slowly going up the rank. It's like, well, now the top one, I'm only going to get, like, I don't know, I'll be able to make 5 of whatever it is. I forget what the order is. But maybe adjusting those numbers a little bit, the requirements to make things a little bit, so that you still get a significant amount of experience in that craft from the 600 green wood or wood that you brought to the table to, like, start with. I don't know, because it more than exponentially goes down, like, way more.
Yeah.
I agree. So I don't know if I like that change, really.
Yeah, we'll see how it actually plays out, and because they don't detail the actual XP changes, they don't highlight the values behind those diminishing returns, so we'll have to see once we get in there how significant that is. Potion crafters, big change here. They feel like some of the high tier core potions, especially health and mana potions, were a little bit too difficult to craft. So they've updated the recipes to craft those to include a new alchemical component to do so, Alkahest. I think I'm saying that right. And that's crafted by distilling the magical herbs found throughout Eternum. Serves as a reliable and potent base for potions going forward. So, good changes there. I always felt like outside of, like, weak potions, it was really difficult to craft potions, and you had to rely on drops.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, those majors or whatever, like, you could be sitting on those quests for a long time. I would just be like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to the store. I'm gonna drop 1,200 gold and just buy the damn thing and finish it. Like, it wasn't just to get it off my plate, but yeah. So
good changes. They also fixed a bug around rare resources from gathering nodes.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been talking about this. Where you kind of had to be in this, like, luck sweet spot, and if your luck was too high, you wouldn't get these, like, already very rare resources, right? So you had to, like, make sure that you weren't too high or too low to be able to get it, and they said they don't want that to be the case. So
yeah, it sounded like it was, like, just numbers rolling over and, like, the luck, like, almost resetting. Like, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
But who knows?
Yeah, so they fix it. That's for things like Fey Iron, Void Metal, Phase Fiber,
Yeah.
Petrified Wood, things like that. Okay, they've also made a couple of adjustments to the loot and rewards. One of the biggest changes, all of the like 64 participants from the Battle for New World event that they had back during the closed beta got to design their own Tier 5 weapons.
Ooh.
So these are just random drops in the world. They are not craftable, and they have the ability to be legendary if they drop at a gear score of 600 or higher.
Cool.
So that's really cool. And then a shit ton of bug changes and UI updates.
And you can read about them because we're not.
You can read about them.
That's yeah, the game's fixed. There's more things that are fixed, and with every update more shit will break. You know it will. All right.
Yep.
Taylor, why don't you put this the tips and tricks in your back pocket for next week's show, because we are an hour into this thing and it is late.
Yeah.
So
that was a sizable podcast.
It was a sizable cast of pods. Thank you so much for listening. This is awesome. I can't wait to dive in with all these changes. Is this live now? I don't remember. The changes?
No, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern.
Right. So, so this show will be up for a few hours before this drops. But let us know what you think of the changes, please. You can join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/DS podcast, talk all about Faction Wars. You can join our Patreon, patreon.com/NDS podcast, just like our Patreon producers, Colton the Apprentice Nestler, FNH Paul, and Vegas Girl on Fire. If you join that, you get into our super secret, top secret, double probation Discord, where we could all hang out and talk, and we could talk New World all day if we want. All day. No one will stop us, Taylor.
And all night, too.
Yep. Not a single person will stop us. But sadly, the show must stop for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, everyone else out there. And thank you, Amazon Game Studios, for making this beautiful video game. Take care. And as always, be excellent to each other